Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I am a digital marketing specialist here at United Training. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Tips in 20 Minutes, Microsoft Excel Shortcuts, presented by David Lalonde. We are using the GoToWebinar platform for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the questions options in your GoToWebinar dashboard for our Q&A portion after the presentation. United Training is excited to present this webinar today. I'll now hand it over to you, David.
All right, thank you, Mariella. So welcome everyone to our webinar. My name is Dave Lalonde, and I do have some tips in Excel that I would love to share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate some of these different features in an Excel file that I prepared for this session. And if you do have any questions, feel free to use chat. I'll probably get to most of the questions toward the end of our session. The first part will probably be mostly demonstration only, but yeah, feel free to type in any questions anytime you've got them. So for our agenda for this session, first tip of the day, I want to talk about working with named ranges in the Excel program. We'll then talk about creating data validation lists, which is about drop-down menus in Excel. Good feature to know. We will talk about using the text to columns feature in Excel, as well as removing duplicate data. And finally, I've got a few useful Excel options for you that I think you might find handy. Again, anytime we have left over, once we get through all these topics, will be Q&A, and you are welcome to type those questions in chat. But these are just some tips that I think you might find some use for in the Excel program, tips or features that I think everybody should at least be aware of. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring up my Excel file here. And again, first topic of the day, we'll be working with named ranges. So in Excel, we do have the ability to select a range of cells and assign a name to them. That would allow us to quickly select these cells at any time in the future. And you can also use these named ranges in formulas or functions. Might be a quicker or more handy way of using functions within Excel. So there are a couple ways of creating named ranges I'd like to demonstrate to you. Right now, I've got this Excel file with a sheet tab called Employee Data, which has information of just that. Employee names, numbers, years of service, division, department, health plan, parking lots, all that good stuff. Now, let's say that I want to create a good named range for each individual category of data. I'll start with my first one, employee number, and select all of those data cells. Now, I'm not selecting the category header, because you can use these named ranges in formulas and functions. And if you use a named range in a formula or function that contains a category header, well, that might mess things up, might give you a wrong answer, maybe even an error message outright. So just selecting the data cells. Now, underneath my ribbon, over on the left-hand side of Excel, I've got this little field known as the name box. And it has a few different purposes to it, but we can use this name box to create named ranges. And it is as simple as selecting our cells, clicking in the middle of that name box, typing in a name for this range, and pressing the Enter key. Only thing to keep into consideration here is that spaces are not allowed. Letters, numbers, and underscores only. So I'll type this in as employee underscore number, followed by the Enter key. All right, so I have just created a good named range in Excel. And what does that mean? Well, I can go to any other location in this workbook, and if I go back to my name box, I will see a little drop-down arrow next to it that I can click on. That will bring up a list of all named ranges created in the workbook, and there's the one that I've created. Click on it, and those cells are instantly selected. Now, instead of doing this one category at a time, I think I would like to name the rest of these categories all at once. And this will be using a different method to create named ranges. And for this method, I will select all the rest of my data, including category headers this time, which I did not do the last time I created a named range. You'll see why I do this in a moment. Now, you can find named range options in your ribbon. They are located in the Formulas tab above the ribbon. Right in the center of the ribbon, you will find a defined names group. And here is the option to create from selection, which is what I'm going to click on. Create from selection. That will bring up a window saying create names from values in the what? Top row, left column, bottom row, right column. Well, I do have names for these ranges in my top row. All of those category headers I have selected. So I will leave a check mark next to top row, but I'm going to uncheck left column here. That would actually make a named range for each employee first name, which is my currently selected left column. I don't want that. So check mark next to top row, click on OK, and you'll notice this time I did not type in anything at all. But if I go back to that name box over on the left-hand side of Excel and click on that drop-down arrow, you will see I have a good named range for each category of data. You can see that Excel placed underscores anywhere there were spaces in those cells. And anytime I select one of these named ranges, Excel will only select the data cells, not the category header. Excel only use that category header to get a name for this range. So besides being able to quickly select these cells in the future, why would you do this? Well, one reason would be for formulas or functions. Now, I have a category of my employees' years of service, and let's say I just want to know their total years of service overall. I'll just do a quick little function over on the side of my data set here. Zoom in a little bit more so you can see that better. All right, and I'm just going to do a sum function. Equals sum within this cell and initial parentheses. Now, normally I would have to type in that range of cells or select all the cells that I want to add together, but I do have a named range for these cells, years of service. And if I start typing in that named range, years, I can actually see Excel will suggest this named range to me, and I can double click on this named range that appears in the list to plug it into my formula. And I'll see a nice blue box around those cells, letting me know that is included in this formula. All right, so I'll just hit enter, and now I will have my answer. So this is a great method for selecting a bunch of cells and formulas that are in a different location, or it's a large data set you don't really feel like selecting. Quite useful. Now, if you do want to edit or delete any of these named ranges, you cannot do that in the name box itself. That's only for creating named ranges and selecting them. You would have to go to your Formulas tab, back to that Defined Names group in the center of the ribbon, where you can find something called the Name Manager. Click on that. You will see all of your named ranges, and here you can edit or delete them. All right, and we might see our named ranges pop up again in just a moment for our next topic, which will be creating data validation lists. Yes, Excel drop-down menus. Very handy little tool. Good to know how these work. So going right back into that same data set, let's say that I do want to create some drop-down menus next to my data set in column K. I can go ahead and click and drag to select any cells where I want a drop-down menu. And this is a feature known as a data validation list. Data validation is a way for us to limit the type or amount of data that goes into cells, but it is how we make drop-down menus. So with these cells selected, I'm going to go to the Data tab above my ribbon. Toward the right-hand side of the ribbon, center right, there is a Data Tools group, and here I can find the icon for data validation. It's a green check mark and a red circle. Click on that. That will bring up a data validation window where I can actually choose what is allowed to be placed in these cells. Any value by default, but we have a drop-down menu where maybe instead we would limit this to a range of whole numbers, a range of dates. We might want to limit the text length, the number of characters in these cells, but we can also find list, and that is the drop-down menu. So I will allow a list, and we will need a source for this list. Yep, what are going to be the selectable options for the drop-down menu? A few different ways you could do this. If you have a few simple options, you could type them out separated by commas. If I wanted to make drop-down menus for my parking lots, like north, south, or west, I can type in north, comma, south, comma, west into that source field. All right. Another method that would work for the source of these selectable options, I could just click and drag to pick some cells and say these cells right here. This is what I want for my drop-down menu. But we also have named ranges that we could possibly plug in here. Now, when you're typing in a named range in one of these fields in a separate window, Excel will not suggest the name ranges to you like it will in your formulas or functions, but there is a paste name hotkey that allows you to plug in those named ranges anywhere you want, and that hotkey is F3, the function 3 key at the top of your keyboard. Press that key, will bring up a paste name window where I can see all of my named ranges, and I'll just pick one from my drop-down menu, like last name. Click OK, click OK again in the data validation window, and now for any of these cells that I select, a drop-down arrow will pop up that I can click on to select an employee last name, or any data from whatever cells I had selected in the data validation window. All right. With those cells selected, excuse me, you can always go back to data validation in your ribbon if you do need to change any of these options, or if you want to get rid of that drop-down menu, just allow any value once again. Okay, so that's topic number 2 for the day. Moving right along, next feature is going to be text to columns. So sometimes in Excel, we have information that is grouped into the same cell that we might want to split up into different cells, and this is the text to columns feature. Moving on to another sheet tab, I have another list of employee names, first and last names in the same cells, a department, as well as an extension. It's actually an extension and a region, if you ask me. All right, we'll start with our names. First and last names are in the same cells, but let's say we want to split them up. Last names in one column, first names in another column. Yep, that is text to columns. Now, before I do this, these first names that I split up will be moving into the adjacent column. And if there's already data here, that could be replaced. So I will want to insert an extra blank column to make room for those names. I will then select the cells that I want to split up into different columns, all those first and last names, and the text to columns feature is actually located right next to data validation in your ribbon. It's in the data tab above the ribbon, data tools group, and it's the first option right here, text to columns. All right, so we'll click on text to columns. That will bring up a text to columns wizard in a separate window where we need to choose how our data is split up, or what's in between the data we want to split up. Delimited is what we would choose if there's some sort of character in between our data, like a comma or a tab or a space or a dash. Fixed width would be if you have the exact number of spaces in between your data. I do have a comma in between my first and last names, so I will stick with delimited and click on Next in this text to columns wizard. Next step, I get to choose my delimiter. What's actually separating my text? Well, it's not a tab. I've got a check mark for that, I'll uncheck. I actually have a comma and a space in between my first and last names. So I'll put check marks next to those boxes, and you can actually see your data split up down below as a preview. If you have some other character splitting up your text, like a dash, something that you don't see as an option right here, you can always put a check mark next to other and put in the character right there. All right, now that's actually all I really need to do for the text to columns wizard. I could click on finish in the bottom right hand corner, but if you want, there is one more step you can get to if you click on next to change the format for these different columns. But I don't have anything special here. I will just finish. Okay, and there you go. Last names in one column and first names in another column. Do that example one more time really quickly with these extensions and regions. I think I would like to have regions in one column, extensions in another column, and these are separated by a dash. So selecting these cells, I'll go right back to my data tab, back to the data tools group, click on text to columns. We'll stick with the delimited, click on next. And for my delimiter, it would not be a comma or a space, but a dash. And I'll need to put that in the other field right here. Click on finish in the bottom right-hand corner, and there you go. Data has been separated once again. So another useful tool when it comes to data management, making sure everything is nice and organized. All right, fourth topic, fourth tip of our webinar will be removing duplicate data in Excel. So going right back to our spreadsheet, I have another sheet tab called duplicates, where I have more employee information. But in this data set, I have a feeling that I've got some duplicate data. I have multiple employees with the same name. I actually have Brian Johnson with 12 years in the shipping department up at the top, and down below there's another Brian Johnson with 12 years in shipping. Looks like I have other duplicates in here like Diane Walker and also Katie Smith, or Kathy Smith, sorry, who apparently there are two different Kathy Smiths because they have different years in the company and different departments. All right, but let's say that we want to get rid of all of those duplicate entries. Well, I'm just going to select any cell within this data set, and remove duplicates is actually right next to text to columns and data validation. There's really a lot of useful tools in that data tab in your data tools group. Remove duplicates will be the icon that's a few cells with a red X on top of it. Go ahead and click on that. Excel should recognize your entire data set, and you can choose which categories need to be duplicated in order to be removed. Now, if I keep every category checked in my data set, Excel will only remove true duplicates, where every single a category was the exact same value. So if there were two people that have the same name, but maybe different years of service or different departments, they would not get removed in this case. So if I want to remove true duplicates, I'll just keep all the boxes checked, click on OK, and Excel will tell you how many duplicate values have been found and removed and how many remain in your data set. Click OK. So now I've got Brian Johnson at the top, but no more Brian Johnson at the bottom here. Also only one Diane Walker. And then I still have two Kathy Smiths because they do have different years in the company and different departments. If I did want to get rid of that other Kathy Smith, I could just select that data set, go back to my data tools group, click on the remove duplicates icon, and uncheck years of service and department. So only the first and last names need to be duplicated in order to be removed. I'm not actually going to do that. So you might be curious, of all those duplicate entries, which one remains and which entries got removed? Well, that actually is based on how your data is sorted in Excel. So the top entry in your data set is the one that will remain when you remove duplicates. All additional data below it will get removed, gone. So you can always sort your data to change that up. And as just a little extra bonus tip, you can go to your data tab where I am already, find the sort and filter group right in the center of the ribbon, and you can find your basic sorting options right here. Sort A to Z or Z to A, lowest to highest or highest to lowest for any category that you have selected. Just select a category header and sort. When you choose this option or these options in your ribbon, you're only sorting by one category at a time. So I might have employees that have the same last name, but different first names. And I might want to sort by first name after last name. If you do want to sort by more than one category at a time, well, back in that sort and filter group in the middle of our ribbon, that would be the general sort option. It's the icon that says sort. Click on that, and I can choose what I want to sort by first, where I'll go by last name. So you can see I actually have two Averys, Katie at the top, Bob underneath, so not alphabetized as far as first name goes. So in the sorting window, top left-hand corner, there's a button I can click on to add another level. So after I sort by last name, I can then sort by first name. And then I can add another level to sort by something else, like department or years of service. Click OK, and we will see those new sorting options take effect. All right. Now, last tip of the day before we get into Q&A will be just covering a few useful Excel view options. So going back to my Excel file, got one final sheet tab with a lot of data on it that will be useful for this topic. But for this last topic, I'll be going to the View tab above my ribbon. So when you do click on that View tab, I want to draw your attention to the window group over on the right-hand side of the ribbon. Now, you might be doing formulas between different Excel spreadsheets, or you might just need to switch between a lot of different Excel spreadsheets to work on different data in different locations. And you can always Alt-Tab to do that, or minimize and maximize your Excel windows. But we also have this Switch Windows feature you can click on that will bring up a list of all open Excel workbooks. And I can just click on any other workbook that I want to navigate to. From here, I can go back to the View tab, back to Switch Windows, and go back to any other Excel file. So, kind of handy. Now, if I actually wanted to view these two different files right next to each other, there is a side-by-side view. In that same window group in our View tab over on the right-hand side of the ribbon, right at the top, there's the View side-by-side icon, which is two pieces of paper side by side with each other. I'll go ahead and click on that. Oh, you know what? It's coming up in my other screen here. So let me go ahead and show you what happened. Excel showed me both these files at the same time, but they're not actually side by side. There's one on top of the other, and that is the default view. If you want to get the actual side by side view, we would need to change the arrangement of these windows. In our View tab window group, there is an Arrange All option I can click on. Right now I have a horizontal arrangement, one document on top of the other, but if we switch to a vertical arrangement, we can get that actual side-by-side view. Or if I had like 4 or 5 Excel files open all at once, I might choose the tiled view or cascade. But I'll go with vertical, click OK, and there you go, the actual side-by-side view. So I can copy data from one spreadsheet to another, easily select data in another spreadsheet for formulas or functions, anything like that. When I scroll through this document, I see that it automatically scrolls through the other document. This is a feature called synchronous scrolling, and it's turned on automatically when you do this side-by-side view. If you want to turn that off in my ribbon, I'll need to click on this window group right here. And underneath the view side-by-side feature, we have synchronous scrolling, highlighted in green because it is turned on. I'll click on that once to turn it off. And now I can scroll through each document independent of the other. When you want to go back to viewing one document at a time, just click on that window group again in the View tab and select View Side by Side once again. All right. And then final tip of the day. So I've got a pretty large data set here where I'm looking at some production information. And when I'm looking at the top of my data set, I know what all of this data means because I can see my category headers. But as I scroll down in this bigger data set, well, I'm just stuck with the numbers. And I don't necessarily know what they mean anymore because I do not see those category headers. Well, if you would like to still see cells, certain rows or columns as you scroll throughout your document, we can use a feature called Freeze Panes. And that is in the View tab in the window group on the right-hand side of our ribbon. Freeze Panes. If you click on that option, you'll see 3 different ways you can freeze panes in your workbook. Starting from the bottom, you can freeze your first column, like your first visible column, not necessarily column A. If I scroll to the right and suddenly E is my first column, that's what will be frozen if I choose that option. But as I scroll to the right, I might lose track of these certain IDs for my products, and choosing to freeze first column would keep those in place as I scroll to the right. Freezing my top row would keep my top row visible wherever I scroll to, but that is whatever row is visible at the time you chose Freeze Panes. Right now, my top row actually just has some totals. It's not my category headers, so that's no good. I could always scroll down one row, to make that my top row, and then freeze panes. That would work. But we have a third freeze panes option, just a standard freeze panes option. And this is based on a selected cell. I'll just go ahead and select this first number within my data set. And whenever you select a cell and choose to freeze panes, that top option, all rows above your selected cell will be frozen. All columns to the left of your selected cell will be frozen. So by selecting this cell C3, that should freeze columns A and B and rows 1 and 2. I'll go ahead and give that a try. Freeze panes, spread my ribbon there. And now when I try to scroll down, well, I still see all the category headers as I do so, which can be quite handy. As I scroll to the right to view additional numbers to the right or additional data, I still can see the IDs or some information about these different products. So it might make your life a bit easier navigating around Excel. And when you're done with your frozen panes, if you want to unfreeze them, just go back to that View tab, back to your window group, click on the Freeze Panes option, and you will see the top option here changes to Unfreeze Panes. Click on Unfreeze, and we are back to normal scrolling behavior. All right, so there you go. 5 tips that I think every Excel user should be aware of. So we've got a few minutes left. Officially Q&A. If you do have any questions, of course, do feel free to type those in the chat box. So I have
We
quite a few
are,
questions, actually.
yeah, we got a couple questions already. So I'm going to start right off the top with Jessica, and she asked, how can I allow sections of more than one item from a data validation list?
How can I allow a selection of more than one item from a data validation list? Oh, you would actually need to have your options, your 2 different items as one option. So if I wanted to have a data validation list where I could select both a parking lot and a health plan, I would either need to have both options as a selectable option, or I would need to have 2 separate data validation lists. All right.
Perfect. I have another question here from Vaishali. Name range question. Can you use the same name ranges from 2 separate tabs into a formula on any tabs?
Yes, that's one of the beautiful things about named ranges is that I might be in a completely different location from my named range, but I can still just do a quick formula. And I'll do another sum function maybe. So I'm just picking a random cell, but equals sum, and then I can go ahead and still type in my named ranges or begin typing them in. Excel will suggest them to you, double click on it, hit enter, and there is your answer. And that's why I love it, is that I can do the selection of my cells right here. I don't have to know where the cells are. Excel knows. Let Excel go and select them and do all of the hard work. So yeah, great question.
Awesome. So we have a couple coming in. I'm hoping we can get to everyone today, but if we can't, someone will follow up with you. And we have another question here from Shilpa. How do you join 2 columns and put results in 1 column? I'm assuming this has
Ah,
to,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
So that would be 2 ways we can do this, actually. Actually, no, sorry, there's more than 2 ways. This is Excel. What am I talking about? Method number 1, there is an Excel function. In Excel 365, the newest version of Excel, this is called concat. So I can type in equals concat in a cell and just select the cells I want to add together and hit enter. In older versions of Excel, this is known as concatenate, but I would have to do some extra special things to get that comma and space back in. Another method would just be to use ampersands in a formula. I can do equals this cell and ampersand, your and symbol, shift 7 for that, and another cell. Enter, and there you go. You could also do and type in any additional text or punctuation marks you need, but any of those punctuation marks you type in for your formulas must be surrounded by quotes, so don't forget that. And then if you have a newer version of Excel, one of the newer versions, you also have flash fill, where if you're typing this data right next to the data set where these cells are, Excel can pick up on it automatically. Watch, I'll actually just type in Avery, comma, space Betty, my first employee's name. Oops, Babcock will be next. And as I start typing this in, as soon as Excel thinks it's figured out the pattern of what I'm trying to do, say, hey, are you doing this cell, comma space, this cell? Well, yes, I am. We will see this little flash fill list, it's called, pop up, and I can click on that list and have Excel do all that hard work for me automatically. So there are a few different ways of doing the reverse of text to columns.
Awesome. We have another question here from Paul. Can the text to column feature be done in reverse? Oh, I think that's what we just did right now.
Yep, same
There
thing.
we go. Same thing. We have another question here from Jessica. Can I see two tabs from within the same workbook side by side?
Two tabs within the same workbook. Yes, yes, you actually can. Um, what I would do for this, and let me just double check. Oh no, I'll need to do a side by side. That's fine. I think the best way to do this might actually be to just make a new window that you can just quickly arrange. So for this specific Excel file, in my View tab window group, I can click on New Window and go to a different Sheet tab within that window. And if I want to, I can use that View side by side feature. Where let me close up that. So there's side by side, the two pieces of paper right next to each other. Click on that. And this is the same Excel file, but in two separate windows right next to each other, two different sheet tabs. All right.
Perfect. We have another one here from Brian. Is there a way to see what duplicates were removed?
Ah, what you could do before you remove duplicates would be to conditionally format them. And I'll just do this for last names. Um, Now, you'd have to do a formula to be able to highlight every duplicate, the entire, like all cells at once, I should say. But if you just want to highlight individual cells from one category that are perhaps duplicated, you can do what's called conditional formatting. Select your cells, go to your Home tab. Right in the middle of your ribbon is a Styles group where you can then click on this conditional formatting option. Few different ways to highlight cells based on certain conditions. I would hover my cursor over this first grouping of rule types, highlight cells rules, and the last one is duplicate values, where I can highlight these duplicate values with any color I want, can even customize that. Click OK. And this will show you any cell that does have a duplicate elsewhere in the range that you have selected. And that's the simplest way to do that. Again, if we get a little more advanced, we can highlight entire rows or check for every cell to be duplicated before we do this. But unfortunately, that would take more time than we have to cover. All right.
Alrighty. I will call it here because we are a little bit over. And if there are any questions again that you guys have further regarding our webinar, please forward them over to us. Again, we will have someone reach out to you about them. But other than that, thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you sending all this information out into the world. And again, we will be sharing this recording with you all in a follow-up email after the webinar. So again, if you have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. Other than that, thank you all so much for coming and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep, thanks, everyone.
Bye.